Hello and welcome, and thanks for tuning in. We're going to be talking today about the NDIS for personal trainers and how you can be a more inclusive fitness business. Now, you might have seen one of my webinars a while back, and this supersedes that. So we're in mid-2024, there's been some major NDIS updates, there's more major updates to come, so I'm going to be going through those things. So if you knew a little bit about the NDIS, definitely tune into this. If you don't know much about the NDIS, definitely tune into this. And whether you're looking at coming on board with us at Fit Your Ability, or you have no interest in doing that at all, you just want to learn about the NDIS, I'm sure you're going to get some great takeaways for this. So let's jump into it. So who are we? What gives me the right to stand up here and talk about the NDIS? So we've been around a lot longer than the NDIS. I started fitness enhancement last century, 1999. That's my original slogan, Comic Sans, font and all, with my horrible tacky brochures back in those days. We're here for you when the gym isn't. So we've been focused on helping people who are not going to step foot into a gym, but really need to, for the last 25 years. That's been our core market. We've grown a lot since then, but we've still stayed true to its core. Our clients have even stayed the same. That's an old pick of me and a really old pick of me with my first client who is still with us 25 years on. I'm behind the scenes running the company now. I'm not training clients, but I had 15 years training clients as a whole. So that's a little bit of a rundown who we are and where we've grown to over time. As far as where we are today, we're Australia's largest NDIS registered fitness company. We're Australia's largest mobile personal training company. We're the biggest personal training company of any type in Queensland altogether, where I'm based, but we are across 9 cities now, and we service over 4,000 suburbs across 9 cities. So we've grown a lot from the little days, but in some ways it still feels like yesterday when it was just me trying to figure out how the heck to actually grow a business. So for those of you still in that stage, I can relate better than most people. And that's really what we are about as a franchise group. It's about us becoming your business partner. We're stronger together than alone. We were doing that long before the NDIS, and the NDIS has just been something we've added on, and the Fit Your Ability name to help our franchisees grow more, help more people, and of course, to be blunt, make more income as well, because we are business owners as well. We're awarded Fitness Franchise Group of the Year for that last year, beating out a lot of big names like Anytime Fitness and KX Pilates and so on. So that was a really proud moment. And the year before that, we won the Employer of the Year. So whether you be looking to work for us or own a location with us or bring your business to us, we're probably the place for you. If none of that interests you and you just want to learn about the NDIS, don't worry, there's going to be loads of takeaways here for you as well. So as far as where we are as a company, and if you're trying to get the takeaways for your own business, this is really what I recommend you do as well, is fitness enhancement. We're seen as just PTs. You're very inclusive, very caring. PTs would help all people, of course, but intrinsically well and truly in that PT category. Allied health is a totally different area. Disability support, totally different area. Fit Your Ability for us really bridges that gap, and we're really seen as somewhere in the middle. And a lot of that's to do with the branding and the marketing, because as much as this isn't a marketing webinar, reality is if you can't sell why you're inclusive and able to help someone with a disability, no one's going to buy it, are they? And it's not about the money when I say that. They have to truly believe that you can help them. Now, you probably can already help them. You may even have some clients with disabilities. But the question is, how do you get more? And that's what a lot of this is going to teach you as well. So consider where you are in the market. Are you just seen as just a PT and in competition with a million other PTs out there? Or are you something a little bit different? So I think within this too, to sort of look at where you can grow your business from in the disability fitness space, is think about what percentage of your clients have a disability right now. And your gym that you go to, whether you be paying rent there or you just be a gym member, what percentage of those gym members have a disability? Now, it's hard to know that because not all disabilities are visible, right? But honestly, I would hypothesize that probably about 1% of gym members have a disability, right? Which is pretty low. I think you're a pretty proactive person. If you're watching this topic, you're probably somewhere ballpark 5%, 120 of your clients maybe have a disability. That to about maybe 10% is about where my company was as fitness enhancement before 2018 when we started down the NDIS route, right? 17%, that's a reason we've got 17% there, is an interesting reason. Technically speaking, 17% of our country has a disability. That is a government statistic. So if you've got far less than 17% of your members in a gym having a disability, then you're not really, I guess, representing all people in our country. Or do you have more than 30 or more than 50%? So us as a brand or up, Fitness Enhancement Fit Your Ability, we're about 50% disability fitness now. All of our newer locations tend to be about probably 80, 90% disability fitness. That's in part because it's huge, but that's also in part because they just choose to. That's their passion, where they really want to help and they really want to double down on that. Personally, for me in my location, I go, disability or not, we're here to help everyone. So fitness enhancement or fit your ability, we're here to help everyone. So for me, all of any new clients I get coming along, it's probably still about 50-50 to be honest. So as far as disability in Australia, as we said, that 17% of Australians have a disability. That's actually 4.3 million people. Now, if you know anything about gym usage statistics, funnily enough, about, depending on what you read, 15% or so of Australians are regular gym users, as in go on a consistent basis more than once per week. Attend, not just donate money to the gym. So as many people attend gyms as have a disability. So people are always shocked to hear that, but that one in particular, the 4.3 million Australians with a disability, is a government statistic. That's not my statistic, right? Now, the funny thing is, only 600,000 something of these people are on the NDIS, which breaks down to about 14% of people with a disability on the NDIS, which is really not a very big market when you think about it. But everyone seems to think that NDIS and disability go hand in hand. If you've got one, you've got the other. And some people are even like, I have my NDIS clients. And it's like, no, you don't. You have your clients. You just get paid by the NDIS. But I guess the big question is, why does it feel like it is all about the NDIS when it's not, when you look at those numbers? I think the 34.3 billion reasons why is that's how many of our tax-paying dollars went into the NDIS this year, 2024. So it sure as heck feels like it's all about the NDIS. And that's predicted to blow out to about 90 billion by 2030. Now, that's very broad as to what that is. That's clearly not in the PT sector in disability fitness. I'll get to that later. But it's not my place to say where our tax dollars should be spent. But what I will say is, like, 25 years in the industry, right? And we've never seen an opportunity ever for people with a disability to be able to get the same basic support, results, help in the fitness industry and many other industries that we've seen ever before. So I think that's a great place to be spending our taxes personally. So as I said, it's not all about the NDIS, but it is a big help. The NDIS is almost like this magical stamp of approval. Our slogan we've had for years has been award-winning personal trainer since 1999. We'll proudly go along to a doctor or whatever and say that to them, and they'll be like, yep, another PT. Not interested. Now when we say we're NDIS registered, it is like a magical stamp of approval, and people take you seriously within it. So as much as all the other things are a factor with it, it's all everything together that makes a big difference. But it's not all positive. Now, you would see a whole heap of things out there about this. This cartoon that was around a few years ago probably sums it up the best. So most people, for example, who want to get personal training on the NDIS, they're on the NDIS, it's proven they have a disability, they're already getting funding from the government for it, and they want personal training to achieve their goals. Most cannot get it for the reasons that we'll get into it a little bit. It's super frustrating, and I think there's some analogies we could probably draw to this example here as to our industry being seen as non-essential. That became no more apparent than during COVID, where we're all shut down as non-essential. The government seems to think we are just for pumping weights and boosting egos and taking selfies, and they don't look at the rest of what we all do. And we can't fight City Hall on that. We need to position ourselves differently as a business and an industry, I believe, to see that we are different to that. So back onto the NDIS, these are a lot of the headlines you do see popping up the whole time. Now, this has nothing to do with the fitness industry. The fitness industry is this tiniest fraction of the NDIS. You just don't even hear about it in the media. in regards to the NDIS, which is crazy. There's that great big disconnect. There's no real, I guess, support from our industry to the NDIS. We would be the biggest one doing anything within it, and we're just a private business. We're not a association or governing body or anything at all. So hence why my passion for what we're doing here. Now, you'll see a heap of these headlines. If you don't know about it, research it around. All I can really say, because we're really on this, we're not in the really intensive care of the NDIS side of it, right? NDIS, a lot of that funding is going to people who literally need 24/7 support to stay alive. That's very different to what we do. I don't have much knowledge about that, but all I can say is in areas we deal in, I personally don't see dodginess. I don't actually come across people proactively trying to be sketchy and dodgy and doing some of the things you see. I do, however, the whole time see people accidentally being dodgy. They don't know and understand some of the things I'm going through today, and through no misintent, they're committing fraud. It's as simple as that. To me, it's a little bit like someone who doesn't realise you can put all this stuff on your tax return and has committed fraud, but they had no knowledge they committed fraud. It's still fraud, and that's the most common thing I see within it. But there is so much misunderstanding. A lot of people who do not understand it. We have daily battles trying to understand this stuff. I think the NDIS themselves doesn't even know what's going on half the time, I've got to say. So it's not uncommon. Now, the other big headline as well, as you can see in my bottom line there, will the reform have a negative impact on the NDIS? That's a very broad statement, but that's what we literally get people asking us in the fitness industry the whole time. So it depends on what side you're on. If you're on the side of doing the wrong thing, yep, you're going to be booted out and you're going to have big problems. That's not going to work for you. And that is awesome. That's going to happen. If you're an NDIS participant who's legitimately getting funds for your legitimate disability, I don't think you're going to have an issue. They're not trying to stop that whatsoever. They're trying to stop the ones who are taking advantage of a system. And that's good, right? Remember, these are your tax dollars and my tax dollars going into this. So that's good. If you're a legitimate NDIS provider, us and many others out there, I think it'd be great for us. I think in my head office, it'll create a hell of a lot more paperwork and stress for us, but it'll be good, because what it'll mean is the people who aren't registered, which you can legitimately do that, which we'll get to in a bit later, it's going to be very hard for them to do it as an unregistered provider and be compliant. It's going to be very difficult. And so what that then means is that the potential PT client or the person wanting support worker is going to be even more so look towards someone who's registered. They already do. It's already, most of the reason someone will go with someone unregistered is they cannot find someone registered. So I think that will just be massively compounded, and it will push people to step up and become registered, or it will push them out of it one way or the other. So, but if it means vulnerable people are looked after better and our tax dollars are put to better use, that's a good thing, right? But time will tell with what happens there. Now, a little bit back to our industry, a little bit about the fitness industry, right? This is the first time there's ever been money paid by the government to people to be personal trainers. It just doesn't happen. We all know we're kind of seen as no connection at all to allied health. We're still not, but it's a big step closer. We're considered essential. So going back in time here, bringing up bad memories for some people, I'm sure, in COVID times, we were NDIS registered from 2019. We started the process in 2018. Come COVID, everyone got shut down. We're based in Queensland, but we are in Melbourne as well. We're obviously got more shutdowns. We could still do our NDIS registered personal training because we're considered an essential service. The exact same session being done exactly the same way with someone who is not on the NDIS, nope, not essential, shut down. A lot of grey areas in that, of course, but that is something to bear in mind, that when we're talking about minimising risk and protecting your businesses, if you can be seen as an essential service, that's a lot better. On a probably a more recent note, interest rate rises, etc., we never lose an NDIS participant as a client when there's an interest rate rise. We do in fitness enhancement still sometimes lose people when there's an interest rate rise. Certain types of businesses really lose people when there's an interest rate rise. So in trying to look to the future as to where your business is going to be, really consider those things as well. So some of the problems you and I have in promoting inclusivity. Now, you've probably seen this sort of image going through your social media many years ago, and I still have a laugh and a little bit of cringe at it. I personally think about 5 out of 6 of those stereotypes are very correct. Up to you as to which 5 out of those 6 you think it is. And 5 of those 6 stereotypes are actually not a bad stereotype, right? They're perfectly placed. There's a place for bodybuilding. There's a place for boot camps. There's a place for fighting. Those of you who don't know, Muay Thai is my background. 16 years, and I owned a Muay Thai gym for 10 years. So I sure know about sports that can be a bit hardcore and promote and have some injuries in it. But it's about knowing the right thing for the right person, the right place at the right time. So there's nothing wrong with that. Our industry is full of absolutely amazing places, from fight gyms to boot camps to bodybuilding places. We're full of it. They are saturated, you'd even say, right? But that's the problem. We are saturated with that. And we're completely untapped in regards to helping people with a disability. I'd extend that into seniors and really anyone else who has any other struggles as well. And as you see in this, we're not seeing that represented anywhere there. So for us, that's what we're trying to change. So these are a few shots for disability expos that we go to. And I didn't know gyms or PTs could help is the number one thing we hear. Now, thankfully, it's closely followed now by the number 2 thing we hear, which is, I know Fit Your Ability. You're amazing. We train with you. We've heard of you. Our support worker companies worked with you. So that's awesome that that's happening, especially in Queensland, but also in all the other cities we're in too. But you can understand why that's what people are thinking when you look at that previous image, and that's what it is. And you consider the shows like The Biggest Loser or whatever, right? That's what people think our industry is. And they're not far wrong most of the time either, right? They just don't realize there's this sector that's us and probably you, or you wouldn't be watching this, right? So, great example, Disability Expo. There'll be 200 or so exhibitors. We'll be the only fitness business or association there showing that the fitness industry is for everyone. There's been the occasional one over the years, but pretty much always just us. And before us, there was no one, right? Back before 2019, when we had a few clients with disabilities, we weren't going to disability expos. No one else was. So you can understand why people are thinking that we are an exclusive industry and we're not for people with a disability. So we're changing that very quickly. And our stands here, we will be like that for 2 days straight, non-stop. And after about 5 minutes of conversations, if we're lucky, we get the boxing pads on and do a little demo even, people are sold that fitness is for everybody. It's just about finding the right thing for the right ability. So as far as you, what you can do to actively demonstrate that you do cater all abilities, honestly, I think when people watch a webinar like this and you're this far in, you're probably already doing some of those things as well. So preaching to convert on some of this. So just double down on what you probably already know. You know to dress professionally and behave professionally. You should know those things already. But really go and take a look at your social media, for example. If you've got shots there of you flexing your muscles and everything, look, of course, there's going to be some people with a disability who are going, yeah, I want to increase the size of my guns. Of course there are, right? But as a whole, they don't have first world problems. They have real problems. And they're really going to be turned off by someone who's non-stop posting things that could be seen as focused on yourself as opposed to focus on others and whinging about first world problems. So really go and take a look at those things as well. We routinely, and this is talking more fitness enhancement with this side, we routinely get clients calling up saying, I rang you because you've all got shirts on and collared shirts even, and you look professional. And I don't want someone who's half my weight, half my age, and, you know, the stereotypes out there, right? So that for us is great. So I'd really recommend that you look at that, look at your social media profile, look at those things, look at how inclusive you are, and really work on those things and try to go and change anything there that you can. The more we've done it, the more we've doubled down on that with both fitness enhancement and Fit Your Ability, the better it has been for us. So regardless of the NDIS, you can do that and be more inclusive with that. So a big thing to remember here is every client with a disability is unique. We get a lot of questions, people going, what types of clients are they? What disabilities are they? They're these special clients. They're just clients. Every one of our clients is special and unique and different and has their struggles and their hurdles, and we just work around it. So I think bear that in mind, and certainly don't brand your clients as my NDIS client. They're just a client. They just happen to be able to pay for it with the NDIS, which is awesome. As far as what disabilities you tend to work with as a disability fitness trainer, again, a lot of you guys might have picked up 1 or 2 clients over time, but that's really a massively broad spectrum. You know, you tend to, images of like Mick here, he ran a half marathon with us, vision impaired, and that's his trainer Kelly. Images like that probably jump out at people more because it's so visibly obvious that someone has a disability when they're wearing a vest like that, right? But you know, he's just a regular client. He's a pretty fit guy, can run a half marathon, and he's in his late 60s in that picture, by the way. So we're training him like regular thing. In Kelly's case, it was learning the cues of how to actually work with him and train with him. She'd never worked with a vision impaired person before. So I was learning how to work around those things. But it's extremely broad. I would say autism would be the most common disability we get, but again, it's very broad as to what autism is. So just take each person as it comes within it. As far as goals, same goals as a lot of people. There's Kimberly, she ran 10K, she did a half marathon at the end with us actually. She wanted to lose about 65 kilos, she has cerebral palsy, and she got life-changing results with that. Now, funny thing is, a lot of people don't realise this because she's been on a few of our promos over the years, she is not on the NDIS. She's had cerebral palsy her whole life. NDIS came out, 2018, 17 in Queensland. So she wasn't on the NDIS at the time she was training with us. So it's not all about the NDIS, as you can see. Now, it's extreme that we'll get people just like your clients. Not many clients who are overweight go on to run a half marathon. It's a pretty rare situation, right? So it's pretty rare. What you'll tend to get is a lot more clients focused on real goals around confidence, independence, mobility, living the most of life, getting things out of life and so on. And if it's funded by the NDIS, it will always align back with those things. No one can get NDIS funding to go and look jacked, just to be clear, right? They'll get funding to increase their independence, right? If they have the physical fitness and the confidence to go and catch public transport themselves and go somewhere, right? That helps. If that can be related back to how fitness helps, then there's a chance they can get funding for it. So that's what it tends to relate back to. So think about those, I guess, those basic rights us as people should all be able to have. We should all be able to go to shops and do things. We should be able to put our shoes on unassisted. We should all be able to go for a run if we want to. Not everyone can. That's what the NDIS is designed for, us to help those things. It's not designed to help someone go and run 10K. That is not a goal. And again, back to the COVID thing, that's the ridiculous examples the government was drawing, with the assumption being that everyone just wants to train for their PB on a big deadlift. And it's not the case with the fitness industry in general, but in particular with clients with a disability. So where and when do your NDIS participants or any clients with a disability train? So again, it's very generalized, but you do certainly get a higher proportion of people training at the quiet times of day because there's a higher proportion of people who don't work. We do have NDIS clients who work a regular job, of course, but many don't work. We are, as you know, mobile predominantly, and so this is in a client's home, and so we go out to the client's home a lot. The fitness enhancement side, we do that too, because, hey, busy people just couldn't be bothered finding time to go to a gym. We're banging on their door, we know where they live, they're going to get their exercise in. So again, we were doing that long before the NDIS. We do, as I said, have a huge amount of people during the day. I would say our busiest time of day nowadays at my studio, where I'm personally based, that's where our sort of franchising head office is and so on too, about 10 a.m. is our busiest time of day by far nowadays, which means our PTs really enjoy the fact that they can now get solid 8-hour days of work. And I enjoy the fact that we're not booked out several times over in the morning and the night and then dead quiet at lunchtime like we used to be. So it's a good way to sort of spread your work out. Probably the only thing unique to then NDIS in particular will be the SILS houses. So that's supported independent living. There's a few other variations out there as well. And we'll go into the house where there's 4 or 5 people with a similar disability living, supported living, hence the term, and we're there to provide a workout and some fun and fitness and get them being active, just like everyone needs to be doing. How do you get clients? There's another big question we get. So I'll tell you what's not going to work is just being able to slap on NDIS registered and thinking people are going to throw the NDIS money at you. It just doesn't happen that way, right? A lot of people just think you do that and then boom, you suddenly get thrown all this NDIS money. Doesn't happen, as we'll get to in a sec. The way you get clients is the same way you always do. Hopefully you've had some success with this, but let me show you some of our things. You've seen the disability expos already. They're huge for us. For us, we do a lot of social media around it. We have our own brand, our own, everything we have on fitness enhancement. We do double that on Fit Your Ability. So it's two separate brands. Sometimes we'll get an inquiry of both, thinking we're different brands even, but we're the one company. Google, we rank #1 for pretty much anything to do with disability fitness or NDIS fitness, or that extends to disability yoga or karate or anything like that. Jump on Google, do a bit of research yourself and see. Now, if your own website is not coming up anywhere decent, I love the saying in marketing, you are who Google says you are. If you're not up the top, Google says you're nobody, and that is not good. You can't afford to be doing that. We are in the media a fair bit, and a lot of this is even long before the Fit Your Ability side. We have a great website that converts well. We test, we measure, we change, we adjust things. We have our remarketing pixels installed, so those Facebook ads can keep showing to people again and again. You should hopefully be seeing our Facebook ads popping up again and again after this if you go to our site. And funny story this, but we answer our phone. We have our 1-800-PT for you number, but the special thing is we answer the phone when someone calls. It sounds silly, I know, but think about if you Google, plumber near me or whatever, call the first one on Google. If they don't answer, you hang up, you call the second one on Google. If they answer, you hire them, right? That is what people do. You can't afford to not answer your phone. And if you're a one-man show, I get it. It's tough. I've been there. I've had my life revolve around the phone. If you're paying gym rent, same deal. The funny thing is with the gym rent system, though, is you're paying big bucks to be a part of that system, but there's no support to make sure you don't miss calls, and you are only as strong as you're missing. You're only as strong as your weakest link within that, aren't you? So as far as if you are NDIS registered, now there are options to be unregistered too. If you are NDIS registered, whether it be with us or without us, there's a couple of key perks here. So you are in the NDIS provider finder, the NDIS directory. A lot of people use that, but really that's not the be all and end all. The big one is everything just works 10 times better, maybe even 50 times better, I would say, actually, because the reality is we have this at Disability Expos where people are like, oh, personal trainer, NDIS, and they're like, are you actually registered? And we say yes, and they go, oh my God, wow, that's amazing, you are. Here's my information straight away, so instant credibility. And we get that the whole time as well. From now, of course, when we can then go and register for core support, which I'll explain in a bit, then they're really sold on that as well. So that's a whole nother level. So it does work so much better. And think about this, if you're a consumer in anything and you know there's a credible registration out there as opposed to, so fitness industry is a bit different, right? There's no mandatory regulation within it. There's no mandatory accreditation. It's not like the average consumers knowing that there's this higher level of someone who's registered versus unregistered within the fitness industry, right? It's not known by the average consumer. So there's not much value attached to it from the consumer. But in NDIS, there's huge value. So if you can choose from a registered or an unregistered person and everything else is created equal, you're going to choose registered, right? So that's what happens with the NDIS. So the next big one is build your network. Now, you guys are most likely business owners as PTs if you're listening to this, so you probably kind of know about that. Build your network, get your referrals and so on. But these are the key ones in the NDIS sector you need to be doing. Your plan managers and support coordinators are intrinsically the people who manage the money and manage the accounts and find out the services for someone with a disability to use. They're really the key to it with those ones. Get in the good books with those people like nothing else. That's the best thing that you can do. Your support workers are day-to-day helping out someone. And I'd include in that then allied health as well, your physios, etc. So they're important, but they're not as important as the support coordinators as far as building that network. We as a national company work with a lot who are also national companies. So when we open up a new city, we can say to them all and put out some more, hey, letting you know we're now in this new city. And then they go, great, we've had a great experience with you in Melbourne or wherever it is. We want to use you in this new city as well now. They've got their little black book of who they like and who they've had a good experience with, and they're going to keep using that like nothing else. So that's what you get when you come into our network within that. Now, frustrations. So first of all, everyone's frustrations. This is probably back to those media articles we looked at, and these are the frustrations we hear again and again. How does this relate to us in the fitness industry? I think one of the biggest one is we are not used to compliance and regulation. There's no mandatory registration. There's no anything. I mean, obviously insurance is technically speaking mandatory, but whoever checks you even have insurance? No one, right? So we know that there's nothing we have to do, and we always joke that personal trainers aren't that great at counting. They're not that great at dotting the I's and crossing the T's either. So it means they really, really struggle to figure this out. If someone's coming from background where they're used to compliance and governance and programming and government standards. So I'll use my wife as an example here. She's a curriculum coordinator at school. It's where she's doing those types of things. Then someone like that can figure it out a lot better. If you don't have that background, and I'll admit I did not have that background, then it's a lot harder to figure out. For me, thankfully, I had enough people in the team who did not know the NDIS, but they had those transferable skills to be able to help with those things as well, right? The other one is, again, back to our stereotypes. We're not considered NDIS friendly. Like, people assume the worst. We've all probably had an experience where a client's been to a doctor, they've had an injury or whatever, and the doctor's like, oh no, don't go to the gym. You can't do that, right? Here's some medication. Take that instead. We've all had those experiences. People assume the worst about anyone in the fitness industry, which is why it's so important to build that brand, as I've been talking about. So just try to simplify before we get into a couple of really heavy things around the NDIS. I think this is the easiest way to think of it. It's simply a way to get paid that hasn't been available before, a level of credibility that hasn't been available before, a way to help people you've been wanting to help, but you haven't been able to help. And just remember, like anything, there's pros and cons associated with it. There's no free ride in anything in life, right? And that's in particular in the NDIS. Don't just think you can do registration and people throw NDIS money at you. So we're getting into a little bit of the heavier stuff. Just to line it up first, this meme is probably the number one thing I see floating through all the NDIS provider groups and so on I'm in, and it sums it up perfectly. I think the government even thinks this as well, right? So this stuff gets a little bit heavier. So apologies in advance for the headache you might get out of it, but it is super important to really understand some of these things here. Now, my disclaimer, I am not the NDIS. Some people sometimes think we are. We're not. We're a private business, right? We're passionate about helping people understand it so we can help more people as an industry. We're not accountants. We're not financial advisors. So just do a double check with anything. With this, we used to have the rule where we'd call the NDIS 3 times to check anything. Because if we called twice, we'd normally get 2 different answers. That is how different these things can be. And that's the NDIS themselves. So I'm pretty sure I'm correct in what I'm saying, but please do your research on any of these things as well. Okay. So this is just straight off the NDIS site, and I'll translate this into sort of what you guys are going to be used to, right? Reasonable and necessary are a lot of really big things around this. Remember, NDIS is extremely broad, so home modifications to be a more disability-friendly house, right? Putting in ramps, etc. It's a pretty obvious type of one. Some people need 24/7 support. If someone needs 24/7 support, that creates about 4 or 5 full-time jobs just to support one person. So you can see how that money blows out pretty big, and you can see how us seeing a client for 60 minutes once a week is nothing in the scheme of things compared to how much support and funding that person needs, who's also going to need a lot of money spent on the mobility equipment and devices and the technology and doctors and more expensive things than the PT industry to keep them alive. So it's very broad. Who can get NDIS funding? This is a big one. And these top 4 points are what is on the NDIS site. The bottom red points are sort of me putting in layman's terms and answering some of those number 1 questions I know I get from you guys. The big thing to look at is permanent, significant, reasonable, necessary. You'll hear those words the whole time within the NDIS. And back to how you can be more inclusive, these are words to sort of use as well, along with participant versus client. I personally always mix it up, but I make a conscious effort whenever we're talking to anyone in the NDIS to call them a participant, not a client. So to put it in layman's terms for you, if someone has a really major, significant leg injury, if it's not permanent, well, it's not a disability. Therefore, they can't get funding for it. If it's significant and changes how they live every single day and it's permanent, let's say they lose their leg, then yes, they can get funding from the NDIS for it. We have many amputees who we train. Is it reasonable and necessary for them to have a gym membership? No, you cannot get a gym membership on the NDIS. Is it reasonable and necessary to pay a support worker to go and help them at the gym because they need help getting on and off the machines? Yes, because it's not possible for them to use that gym without that. And most gyms are set up for someone who has the intellectual or physical ability to go in and use it. So it might be useful for that. Is it appropriate to have a personal trainer help that person? Yes and no. We've found that a lot of the amputees we have do not have personal training funding because they tend to look at it and go, well, you're fit, strong, lean, healthy. Why do you need a personal trainer? Right? We know the reasons why. Don't shoot the messenger here, but that tends to be how it is. So that's what's a really tough one. And if you look at Mick, the vision impaired guy I pointed out before, he did not pay for his training under personal training funding. He used other funding, and it was essentially support work we were doing out in the community. We could do that because we are registered for core supports. No NDIS registered provider who only has PT, which is about 99.9% of NDIS registered providers out there who are PTs, none of them would have been able to do it under his plan. So it's a very broad thing, and you can see the frustrations around that we often have with it. So it's about understanding these things a lot more to try and get it over the line in a legitimate way, to be clear as well. And if you've got a good support coordinator, they will really go into bat for the person and try to do that for them. If they don't have a good one, they won't. And it's luck of the draw as to what you get there. So you're going to hear a lot about NDIS plans, right? So that is essentially the, I guess, the contract or the plan, business plan, for want of a better word, that they have that is done up for them based on their disability. And it's going to have all different things in it. And this is a massively broad range. If you just Google NDIS plan example and click images, you'll see a few random examples come up there as well. It's very random, but it's probably better than my bullet points here. When we see people with PT funding, it'll range from sort of 1 to 10 grand a year, normally 3 or 4 grand a year is about average. It sort of pays for a session a week if they're lucky. Core funding, which is your disability support, is a lot more, hundreds of thousands a year sometimes for those things. We have had, and we do have many clients who spend sort of, back when this was written, 46 grand a year with us. Is not an uncommon type of number, and we have lots of people training that much. That ties into our disability support as well, but the type of disability support that you guys want to be doing. You want to be out there going for a run and kicking a footy, right? That's what we enjoy doing. That's what most support workers probably aren't going to enjoy so much. The big thing within this, consider that the NDIS participant has a deal with the government, right? And that's who the deal is with the government. There you go, we're going to provide you this much in funding for these various items in these various categories, and it's all backed up by allied health and everything as well, right? You'll hear within this line items the whole time. This is my layman's terms wording of it. Core, consider it essential life things, basically, right? Disability support is one of the biggest ones. Capacity building, consider it almost like a luxury purchase. I don't use that word, but PTs always get what I'm saying when I say considering it a luxury purchase. PT falls into capacity building, luxury purchase, hard to get over the line. Our line items, we have the 7 that are all to do with disability support and of course PT as well, and that's what people can use where they can use us as a registered provider. So that's really important to know. You will note we have exercise physiology and personal training. They come as a one line item. You have one, you have the other. It's about the only time I've seen PT and allied health put in one category, to be honest. In our case, we can't charge the exercise physiology rates because we do not have an accredited exercise physiologist. So even though we're registered for it, we can't charge it because we don't have someone in the team to do that. So obviously anything you're doing, you have to tick the boxes that you have the resume to do that as well. As far as what credentials are required, now this is something that always surprises people. Pretty much nothing. That's quite a surprise, isn't it? You need to have a Cert 3 in foreign fitness or similar. It's actually worded like that. Up until a couple of years ago, it didn't even say you have to have a Cert 3 in foreign fitness either, by the way. It just said personal trainer. That was it. You need the key ones here to look at. Insurance is an obvious one, but remember to check your insurance covers you. Now, I would suggest, NDIS or not, that you check that your insurance covers you for precisely the work you're doing. So often it doesn't for people, and they just don't realize it doesn't. Check and get in writing from your insurance company. You need to have a disability worker screening card. That's the big one. It looks kind of like that. This is a Queensland version. They're a little bit different everywhere, but they're all called something similar. It used to be called a yellow card in Queensland. It is pretty much the same as a blue card. Don't ask me why it's a totally different card, but it is. Anyone can get one of those. I would recommend you get one because it's about, back to showing you being inclusive, it's about showing you've got these things. So that way you can then proudly put on your website, say you've got it, etc., etc. And then if someone's looking at you, they're going, oh, well, they've got a disability worker screening card, they must be suitable. Now that is not NDIS registration, to be clear. Some people get confused. That is about a millionth of the effort to get compared to NDIS registration. It is not NDIS registration. We as a company have our NDIS registration, and then all of our workers underneath us have their disability worker screening card. Right? That's how it works. So we are, within our registrations, we're intrinsically support workers as well as PTs within our registrations. We have our own internal training system we put people through, so we can tick those boxes to say our people are accredited with us. It's not as complicated as it sounds. We are working on making that more advanced and getting more skill sets in with people, but intrinsically, it's not that difficult. There's no massive credentials. The NDIS system is the hard bit. Now, what makes you a great disability PT? It is honestly the same things that make a great PT right now. Again, people are often surprised with this, so I really like to point it out. Education is important. Absolutely continue doing more study and more learning. We will have more things coming out on that line soon with what you'll hear about in a sec. But it's not the be all and end all. It's being empathetic, it's being caring, it's finding a workaround, it's knowing how to regress back the exercises. It's the things that probably already make you great. There's not many people who listen this far to one of my webinars on this topic who aren't already typically a pretty good PT in my experience. If I look at my company, on the very small amount of complaints we get about our PTs, disability or not, it's never knowledge. It's never this person didn't understand enough about Down syndrome. It's never that. It's this person was late. This person was disengaged. This person didn't personalize it. That's called customer service. That's not called exercise science. So we really push in our company to really have high standards around that. And obviously we push for high standards in the exercise prescription and the skills around it, but it's not where we actually have problems. And I think you would find that the same as well. So as you probably become very aware, that is the hard bit, is the NDIS system. All right, so that is where we come in, where if you're working under our NDIS registration, you own your business under us, or you work for one of our business owners, we just take care of the absolute vast majority of it, and you don't have to do much around it. So that's a massive game changer for people, and we're the only way around to actually do that with us, as opposed to what we'll get into in a sec. Services. Now, personal training, there's no restrictions on what that is. The NDIS pricing arrangements, which you'll see in a sec, do not define what personal training is. There's no restrictions on it. So your insurance would be where your restriction is, to check what you can do within that. Low-level disability support services, as you know, we can do all those things. The big thing is we keep inside our scope, we're clear and transparent with what we can offer. We check our insurance covers it for us, and to be honest, it's very broad what we can do, which is why it's such a great opportunity to be able to help more people with disabilities through this. Now, the big one, NDIS registration. Is it mandatory? No, it's not. Some of you, I guarantee, listening out there, have got a client or two who, when you're not registered, keep doing that. But if you want to step it up and go to the next level with it, it's not mandatory, but it's strongly, strongly recommended, whether it be with us or without us, right? As far as if it's worth it, this is a very broad thing because everyone keeps pushing me for a clear answer about is it worth it or not. The best generalization I can give is if you're a small business, so you and absolute max a couple of staff and probably no studio or a cheap little studio, it is not worth it for the cost. It's just simply not worth it, in particular if neither you or your staff have the skill set in the admin and the paperwork. It's just too expensive. It's not just the cost to do it, it's the cost to maintain it. Every 18 months you have an audit. So the audits are not a fun process and you have to be onto things the whole time. So it's ongoing costs the whole time, right? If you're a larger business, so take us for example, it happened at a stage where we're already a national company, right? And so we had the size, the resources and money to be able to afford to do it. That size company can afford to do it, or even just a really big, successful local gym could afford to do it, but they probably wouldn't because you can't get a gym membership on the NDIS. For us, it was the right timing. If NDIS had to come along 10 years earlier, I would not have been able to do it. It simply wouldn't have worked for it. We were a studio on the Gold Coast where I am, and we had mobile PTs everywhere. We're the biggest PT business on the Gold Coast, but I would not have been able to achieve what we've achieved. We could only do it once we were a bigger size and more money and more skills going through the company. So can't give you perfect answers to if it's worth it for you, but that's the best guideline I can give. Now, as far as the options you have out there, registered, we've gone through that. That's really what you get more of. You get more credibility, but you get more expense. Pros and cons. Unregistered, less credibility, less expense. Unregistered is definitely something to be doing because it costs nothing to be able to be a bit more inclusive, put on your site that you can help people with disabilities and so on, and then try to find the workarounds with it. So everyone should definitely be doing that offer. The third option is join us. So you get the best of both worlds. So that really is an absolutely amazing way to do it, and I'll get to that more in a little bit. And of course, you can check out our website for more. So I'm not going too much about us. This is more about the NDIS in general. If you do an audit, this is what then happens. And this is some of the things we're going through. We have our next audit coming up shortly, which I'm really not looking forward to, but it has to be done. And it is not a nice time. It'll be 2 days of them tearing through everything to check that we're compliant with things. They're always super friendly, so it's not that much tearing through it, but it sure feels like it. So it is expensive, but it's a very good investment for us. Now, if you are unregistered and you're thinking, oh, cool, I just won't be registered, no problems. You're still going to have hassles and costs. You're still dealing with NDIS money. You're still dealing with plan managers. You're still having them saying, no, you can't do that. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But more often than not, the plan managers and support coordinators will say, no, you can't do that. You can't spend that money with an unregistered provider. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. But if the trusted support coordinator is saying that's a person with a disability, they're normally going to believe it. So there's still going to be hassles and costs around that. Rates the NDIS pays. This is a hot topic. Now, I'm making this in July 2024, so the NDIS pricing arrangements have just come out for 24-25. Every year they normally go up, and they go up sort of 4 or 5% to prices. The great thing about that is it means everyone just by default gets a price increase every year, and they're totally happy to pay it. That would not happen with regular PT, would it? We're always really nervous when we increase our prices as regular PTs, my company too. NDIS is totally standard. Prices just go up every year. So that's really great. You'll see in the price guide, it's 95 pages to try and understand what you can charge in NDIS. You'll see the PT rate is horribly low. But if you don't understand it, that is what the rate is. If you do understand it, you realize all the other different things that you can charge for, and then the rate is good. But that's where I guess we come in, and that's part of how we work and what we help with you, is we help you understand those sides of it, and that's unique to what we can do here as well as a registered provider as well. So if you look it up and you see a horrible PT rate, think, well, that's what people who don't understand the NDIS charge. Anyone who doesn't understand the NDIS legitimately charges a really good, fair rate comparable to your regular rates, right? If you're dealing with a plan manager or support coordinator, they should be able to guide you through these things. But again, you get good ones and bad ones. You don't get much in between. A big thing on this too, you cannot charge upfront. Now, I've seen many PTs in our industry, and this is one of the reasons I make these webinars, because I'm so worried that someone's going to come really unstuck in the industry, and I don't want that to happen to them because they're trying their best. I also don't want that to reflect badly on everyone in the industry, which includes my company. You cannot charge up front. It doesn't matter if the participant is saying you can. You can't. It doesn't matter that you're not registered and therefore you don't know this stuff. Somehow you're supposed to know this stuff. You can't charge up front. You can only charge after the appointment. And that is so black and white within that. You also, even if you're unregistered, you cannot charge outside the pricing limits. But again, don't look at that black and white with what the limits are. There's a lot more to it than just looking at a $1 figure that you'll see in that. So if you are doing something that you're thinking, I'm not too sure, or Scott, so I can't do this, but I think I can, easiest solution, just get that in writing from the plan manager, support coordinator, the NDIS participant saying, I'm requesting for you to do it like this, right? Because then you've got in writing that you aren't trying to just jack the prices up on them or charge up front or anything like that. Get in writing, right? There's a lot of grey areas there, but if you've got that in writing and it comes back to you, you're going to be able to say, well, no, I tried to do the right thing. Look, I even confirmed with them that that's what they wanted and I could do that. Really important to do that. This is a big one. NDIS services are GST exempt. Now, those of you turning over more than 75 grand a year know the pain of paying a GST bill each quarter. NDIS services are GST exempt. But again, it's only if you're compliant and you have the correct service agreement and everything. So that makes a massive difference. We've gone from having this humongous GST bill each quarter to not really having a GST bill each quarter because of all the NDIS appointments that we do. So it all evens down to wash GST, as you should know, but it certainly does feel like a big expense, even though it was never your money. So it is a really good extra perk. One more example of why we're deemed an essential service when it comes to that. Payment methods, how do you get paid? So you often hear these words. There's NDIA managed, which goes straight through the government. That's only available to us as a provider, or any providers. There's plan managed, which is the support coordinator dealing with it and helping you to get paid and being almost a middleman to look out for the NDIS participant. And there's self-managed, where they'll pay for it direct themselves, just like a regular client, but it needs to be done a certain way in regards to it. There's pros and cons to each, and depending on where you are, it seems random as to what the breakdown is between what ratio you have here within that. So NDIA plan managed, if you're not registered, forget about that one. It's not possible to get paid with that if you're not registered, right? You can only maybe, depending on how it's done, get paid plan or self-managed. So sometimes technically you can get paid, but you'll get support coordinators saying, nope, can't do it. Not true, but if you get told that again and again, well, you can't fight City Hall on some things around that, I find. So we've worked through these ones already. So that's really the big one. The fund reserve here, it's a really big thing to look at. Now, this is sort of helps you maybe understand a bit more about it. So you know how I said there's the essentially the government contract. The NDIS participant has a contract with the government. What they're then doing is they're lining up you to then have a contract with the government that basically says, hey, every time John has a PT session, Scott can draw down on that money that's reserved, right? And it can only be when it's there, and the funds are reserved. So that to me is a lot. I value what's on a service agreement with the total amount on a service agreement. I value that higher than what I see in our direct debit contracts for our regular PT, because the government doesn't pull out when interest rates go up, do they? They're still going to be paying it. All you have to do is make sure you keep the NDIS participant happy and training, and you can continue to draw down on that very secure income for you. Okay, plan manage, as we said, you're going to be working with those plan managers and support coordinators a lot as well. As I've already sort of said, you tend to find they're great or they're terrible, and there's not much in between. So they will help you with it, as I've got on the bottom there, when they're good. When they're not, it's a bit of a pain to deal with, and you really want to know your stuff so you can go into bat and say, yes, I can do that. Self-managed, again, it's very much paying like normal, but this is a big one. If you want to be DST exempt, you still need to follow the processes we've talked about. You can't just get them to pay like regular and go, no, there's no DST on that. You have to pay DST on it. So again, that's a one to check with your accountant. So paperwork, you're going to hear a lot about service agreements and different things like that. So that's a great big, against contract between you and the NDIS participant that then locks the government in, doesn't lock the NDIS participant in. You'll have home risk assessments and client screening and audit registers. If you're unregistered, some of that may not be needed, but technically speaking, it should be used. These are things I think will be cracked down a lot more on when the reform happens. As opposed to unregistered people just being like, oh, just treat them like a regular client. I don't think that will be doable. It'll be cracked down a lot more is my thoughts, but who knows. So as far as which is best for you, because there is a lot in that, honestly look at where your business and personal goals are. Where do you want to be, not just next week, but next year, the next 5 years? Where do you want to be personally and professionally? That's, I think, the big one that helps you determine if being registered, unregistered, joining us, or doing nothing with the NDIS at all is for you. I think it's really going to come down to those things. So really have a look at the pros and cons with that, and do your research is the biggest one. And hopefully this has done a fair bit of that research for you. So really that's our big goal out of this, is to actually see us get the fitness industry being inclusive. We want to get to the stage where it's not abnormal for someone with a disability to go and work out at a gym or have a PT or join in a class. It shouldn't be deemed strange and weird and abnormal for someone to do that. It should be normal. We should be seeing the same way we see that massive diversity in all the different areas of the fitness industry. I mean, you think about in the last 25 years, I'm sounding old now. Back then there was just gyms and that was it. There was no 24/7 gyms. There was no sort of boot camp F45 type places. There was no Pilates studio. There was no mainstream martial arts, boxing, MMA type places. There was the niche hardcore ones, but there was nothing that was mainstream. It just didn't exist. Now it's so diverse, as long as you don't have a disability. And then if you have a disability, there's almost nothing out there for you. So that's our goal, is to see that get a lot broader around that. So within that, we have our 3 different ways of how we do that. We are still fitness enhancement. That's still what anchors all of this. And the reason we've been successful with the Fit Your Ability name is because of what we built with fitness enhancement in the 2 decades before that, and the 4 or 5 years of franchising before Fit Your Ability came along. We are also proud to have recently launched Disability Fitness Australia. It was launched in late 2023. And that's still a little bit under wraps as to what that is at the moment, but you can probably hear the passion for really, I guess, connecting disability and fitness together, and that's what's going to do that. There is nothing in the industry, from a private business or association or governing body or anything at all, that has a strong connection to the disability sector. So that's what we want to be doing with Disability Fitness Australia, to draw those connections. If you think about it, there's no shortage of sporting groups that do that. The Olympics are on right now, right? Paralympics will be on after that. We all know what a great job they do with making fitness, well, sport, I should say, not fitness. Fitness and sport are different. Making sport accessible and showcasing that someone with a disability can do that. The Special Olympics will do that too, the sport. But there's no one doing it for fitness. There's a connection there, but there's not that much of a connection. So that's really what Disability Fitness Australia will be about. We'll have a lot of education and so on around that as well. So stay tuned about as to what that's about. We'll be releasing more on that soon. So lastly, if you'd like to learn more about all of this, if you've got questions about the NDIS, reach out any time. So if you're interested in potentially coming on board with us, that is when you should be reaching out. So very briefly, because you can go to that site there, fityourability.com.au/partner. You'll often, depending on what link you click then, you'll go through to the job bit where you can apply for a job with one of our locations. We are no rent, no expenses. You get paid the whole time. You never work for free. That's got nothing to do with the NDIS. That's how we've always been. Because I believe you work, you should get paid. That doesn't always happen in the fitness industry, though, does it? That is why we're awarded the #1 employer in the industry, is our great system within that. So if you're interested in working for one of our locations, reach out through that link and go through the steps to apply for a role with us. You'll probably wind up on a fitness enhancement site for a job application area. If you're interested in owning a location with us, very briefly, we have exclusive territories. We're a franchise system. Again, if you look at the top 10 in the fitness franchise group of the year, they were all, I don't know, $300,000 to $3 million type range to open up because they're physical bricks and mortar places. We are a tiny fraction of that because we do have studios, but the vast majority of our franchises are mobile franchises. So there's no bricks and mortar overhead, no real big expenses, a very low startup cost, but you still get the perks of owning a real franchise. And we're the only fitness franchise in the country that has any NDIS registration. You've probably already gathered that as well. So if you're interested in that side of it, look at that. If you're going, I just kind of want to keep my own business and ramp that up with this NDIS thing, still reach out, still look at the personal training business side because you'll get a lot of information about that and be able to decide how that will work for you. So that's it for me. That's a lot we've packed into that. I'll look forward to any questions. Reach out anytime. That's my direct contact details. Reach out anytime. If you're finding me online, Facebook's the best thing. That's my profile pic on Facebook. Reach out and I'll hope to talk to you in person sometime soon. See you later.